Welcome back, students. I am your geography teacher Vandana Joshi and you are watching SST Zone. Students, in our previous video under the topic water ocean currents, we have studied about the waves, different types of waves and the tides and the uses of tides. So in that series, in our today's video, we are going to study about the ocean currents, in which we will study what are the ocean currents. Our first topic will be what are the ocean currents. Our second topic is types of ocean currents. Types of ocean currents. Okay, in which we will study about the two different types of ocean currents on the basis of temperature and on the basis of its depth. Then after that we will see the third topic, in which we will see the major ocean currents. This will be our third topic, about which we will discuss the three types of oceanic currents, in which three oceans we will see, and what are the major oceanic currents in that sea, that we will see. Then after that, in the fourth topic, which will be the last topic of our today's video, we will see another new topic, that is effects of ocean currents in human life. Means how the oceanic currents are effectful for the human beings, that we will study in our today's fourth topic. So now let's start our today's topic with the first subtopic, what are the ocean currents. Now let's see what are the ocean currents. The ocean currents are generally defined as the organized, coherent and the circulatory belts of water bodies, which are moving in the vertical and the horizontal movement. Okay, the ocean currents are influenced by two types of forces. So these are influenced by the two types of forces. These forces are known as the primary forces and the secondary forces. Okay, so the oceanic currents are influenced by two types of forces. These are known as the primary forces and the secondary forces. The primary forces are the solar heating, as solar radiation, wind, the pressure of wind, the gravity of our earth and the Coriolis force, which is showing the movement of our earth. So these are the primary forces. And if we talk about the secondary forces, the shape of the coast is a secondary force which is influencing the occurrence of the oceanic currents. So now we will see these two types of forces in detail. So first of all, we will see how the solar radiation and the solar heating is a responsible factor for the primary forces for the ocean currents. So as we know that solar radiation is influencing the temperature of the sea level. So the temperature difference is occurred due to the solar radiation and the solar heating. So warm water, as we know, it is lighter and rises, but the cold water is denser and sinks. So this makes the difference in the level of a sea. Warm equatorial water moves poleward along the surface, while the cold water from the poles move along the bottom towards the equator. So due to the solar heating, the movement of water is also affects. So if we talk about the wind, as already in the last video we know, the wind is also a responsible factor of the vertical and the horizontal movement of the oceanic water. So how the wind is affecting to the currents? The prevailing winds influence the ocean currents more than any other single factor. These winds blow in a particular direction and drag the surface water due to the force of friction. This leads to the formation of ocean currents. That means to say the formation of ocean current, the main reason behind it, the prevailing wind. Now let's talk about the gravity, how the gravitational forces affecting or known as the primary force of which is influencing to the ocean currents. So the gravity tends to pull the water down the pile and create gradient variation. The gravity is also a cause behind the tides as neap and spring tide. So due to gravity, the tides are occurs and which are influencing the different type of oceanic water in the form of ocean currents. If we talk about the another factor which is Coriolis effect, due to the Coriolis effect, the moving water turns and flow elliptical path which is also known as the gyre. The water circulates in these gyres in clockwise in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. So these are some primary forces. Now let's see what are the secondary forces and how these are affecting. So one out of these secondary forces is the shape of the coast. The shape of the coast diverts ocean currents. For example, the Cape Sao Rique of Brazil diverts the south equatorial current as Brazilian current. And the another one factor which is known as the differences in salinity. The waters of high salinity are denser and heavier, while the waters of low salinity are lighter. As a result, lighter water with less salinity rushes towards the high salinity water and a current formed. Now let's see what are the types of currents, in which we will see the different types of currents. The types of currents. So students, generally the currents are classified on the basis of their depth, and on the basis of their temperature. So on the basis of depth, the currents can be classified again two types, that is surface current and second is deep ocean currents. So there are two types of depth, that is surface current, and the another one is the deep ocean currents. And if we talk about on the basis of temperature, the currents are again divided into two types. One is the warm ocean currents and the another one is the cold ocean current. So again you can see the types of currents are divided. The types of currents are divided into two parts, on the basis of depth and on the basis of temperature. If we see on the basis of depth, the types are divided again into two types. These are the surface current and another one is the deep ocean currents. Now if we will see on the basis of temperature, the currents are again divided into two types, that is warm ocean current and the cold ocean currents. Students, Students, if we talk about the surface current, the surface current is also known as the surface circulation, is from surface to 400 meter. It is from surface to the 400 meter of the sea level, and it is makes a 10% about of the oceanic currents. And if we talk about the deep ocean current, it is starts from the below 400 meters to the 400 meters to the sea ocean basin. Okay, and it is also known as the thermohaline circulation. And the deep ocean currents frames around 90% of the ocean currents. And if we talk about the warm ocean currents and the cold ocean currents, the warm ocean currents flow from the low latitude areas in the tropical zone towards the high latitude in the temperate and the subpolar zone, whereas the cold currents flow from high latitude to the low latitude area, as the warm currents are formed near around the equator and the cold currents are formed near around the high latitude or the polar areas or the areas which are situated in the high altitude areas. Students, as we know, the earth is rotating from west to east, and due to which many forces are occurring on the earth, due to which the ocean water is also moving. So here we will see few characteristics of the ocean currents. The first characteristic is based on the Farrell's law. So the first characteristic according to Farrell's law, ocean currents move to their right in the northern hemisphere and move to their left in the southern hemisphere. Means due to the movement of earth, which is also depend on the Farrell's law, due to that the ocean currents always they move towards their right in the northern hemisphere and they move toward left in their southern hemisphere. Second characteristics of the ocean water is the warm currents move towards the cold sea and the cold currents move towards the warm sea. That we will see in the detail when we will see about the oceanic currents, the different type of oceanic currents. But the meaning of that, the law is saying the movement of warm water, the warm current is always towards to the cold sea, and the movement of the cold current is always towards to the warm sea. So it is the second characteristic of the ocean current. So the another characteristic of the ocean current, that is in the lower latitude, warm currents flow on the eastern shore and cold currents on the western shore. Another one is in the higher latitude, warm currents move along the western shore and the cold current along to the eastern shore. If we talk about the another characteristic of the oceanic current, so that is the cold and the warm currents meet along the convergent line. There is a convergent line where the cold and warm ocean currents meet along with each other. Then after that they move out along again in the divergent boundary. After the convergent, two ways are there through which they are diverging from each other. Then after that, the another one is the cold currents move as subsurface current and warm currents move as surface current. So that is also important, that cold currents move as the subsurface current. These are known as the subsurface current. And the warm currents, these are moving as the surface current, because the warm water is lighter as compared to the cold current. So that's why it is moves as the surface, and the cold water is a little heavy, so it is known as the subsurface. And the heaviness and the lightness of the oceanic current is also depend on its salinity. Now, after the characteristics of the ocean, we will see the major ocean currents. in which we will see the currents in the Atlantic Ocean, the currents in the Pacific Ocean, and the currents in the Indian Ocean. As you can see on this map, the blue lines are showing the cold water currents and the red lines are showing the hot water currents or warm water currents. And these currents are like a small river flow in the ocean and have their own name, which is after its origin. Like the Labrador current is known as its same name because it is originate near around the Labrador. Same like the Canary, Gulf Stream, and many more are there. So now we will study the different type of ocean currents. Here one interesting point, important point which is also interesting is about the two cold water of the Arctic and the Antarctic Ocean. We know these all oceans are not the separate ocean. Combinedly, these are known as a super ocean. So this super ocean is having 5 parts. 3 are the flowing ocean and 2 are the form of a ice ocean, which are known as the Arctic and the Antarctic Ocean. So the water which moves in these two oceans as a form of current, it is moved into the circulation motion due to the Coriolis force, and the ocean currents also moves into the circular movement. So that's why these ocean currents are not mingled up to other 3 oceans. So now we will study the movement of oceanic currents into these 3 oceans, that is Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. So now first of all we will talk about the currents in the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean may be divided into 2 basins. First is the North Atlantic Ocean and second is the South Atlantic Ocean, each with a distinct circulation pattern. The clockwise moving current of the Northern Atlantic and the anti-clockwise moving current of the South Atlantic are separated from each other by the equatorial counter current, the line which you are seeing in the between. The major currents are Gulf Stream. It flows from Florida Strait to northward. 2 cold currents, Labrador current and East Greenland currents, bring cold water into the Atlantic Ocean. The South Equatorial Current dominates the northern portion of the South Atlantic Ocean. It flows east-west just south of the Equatorial Current, and the Brazilian currents brings very warm saline water to the coast of Brazil and Uruguay. The Falkland current is an extension of the west wind drift. Now we will see the current in the Pacific Ocean. So the major currents are in the Pacific Ocean. First is the North Equatorial Current. It is a warm current. It flows south of the equator from the east to west. Another one is the South Equatorial Current. It is also a warm current. It flows south of equator from east to west. The third one is the Kuroshio Current. It is a warm current. It flows along the coast of Japan. Another one is the New South Wales Current. It is also called East Australian Current. It is a warm current. It flows south along the east coast of the Australia. The another one is the Antarctic Drift. It is a cold current. It flows round the globe from west to east near the Antarctic Ocean. Another one is the Humboldt Current. It is also known as Peruvian Current. It is a cold current. It flows from south to north along the west coast of South America. It is a branch of Atlantic Drift. Another one, the seventh is the Californian Current. It is a cold current. It flows along the coast of California and Mexico. And the eighth current is the cold current. It is cold current from Bering Strait. It flows south along the coast of Kuril, Iceland. Now let's talk about the currents, the ocean currents in the Indian Ocean. The characteristics currents of the Indian Ocean are different from the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. The monsoon influences the circulatory pattern of the currents of the North Indian Ocean, while the currents of South Indian Ocean are influenced greatly by the anticyclone air circulation. The south equatorial currents flow from east to west. On reaching east coast of Africa, its major portion turns southward as the Mozambique currents and it becomes the Agulhas current. Students, just now we have seen the major oceanic currents. Now we will see the effects of the ocean currents. The ocean currents are so much beneficial for the human beings in the different manner. So let's see how these are effectful or what are the advantages of these ocean currents. And the mixing of warm and the cold current help to replenishing the oxygen and favor the growth of the planktons, the primary food for the fish. So it is helpful for the fish industry. Even some of the best fishing areas of the world are located in place where the ocean water is rich in the nutrition and the plankton, because due to that the fish industry or the marine industry is high in the growth. Even many species of marine life take advantage of ocean currents for their seasonal migration. Also, traveling along a current saves fuel while traveling against it costs more fuel. The currents are also beneficial because when the cold and warm water currents are mixing with each other, so the temperature of the area near the coastline is going to be humidic, and due to which in many cold areas the temperature is in a good condition and there is a fog, but generally areas are arid in few areas. The west coast, brooded by warm water, cause a marine climate. They are characterized by cool summers and relatively mild winters with a narrow annual range of temperature. The mixing of warm and cold water current helped in many areas for maintaining the temperature of the coastal areas. Students, here we have seen the water is not only a part of nature and it is also helping to the human life. It is for the survival, it is for the industry, and it helps us in many ways. So student, here our chapter the water, ocean and its current is complete. We will study about the biodiversity in our upcoming videos. So for that, keep watching SST June.